Hey everyone, and welcome to Reviews at Ryan, and today on the channel I'm going to be talking about the brand new drama mystery film called Where the Crawdads Sing. This film was directed by Olivia Newman, and she's done some short films, and she's also done some episodes for some shows like Chicago Fire and Chicago PD. And if you guys are new to the channel, I'd like to ask for you to hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and comment below your thoughts on this film, and also turn on the notification bell so you don't miss anything that I post, and I post weekly. And now without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on this brand new film. A woman who raised herself in the marshes of the Deep South becomes a suspect in the murder of a man she once was involved with. The film stars Daisy Edgar Jones, Taylor John Smith, Harris Dickinson, Michael Hyatt, Sterling Macer Jr., and David Strathairn. Where the Crawdads Sing, I didn't really have a lot of hype for this movie. I knew that it was a mystery kind of film. The trailer, it gave it away that it was going to be a murder kind of mystery. So going into this film, I knew that it was a book. Back in 2018, it was released, and I knew that it was produced by Reese Witherspoon. So I was just hoping that we would get something half decent, and I did not like this movie. But let's get into my positives first. So the few positives that I had about this film, I did like Daisy Edgar Jones in this. I watched her in another film recently called Fresh. I thought she did really good in that film as well. And I like that she has a little bit of variety of roles here. I think that her character is the most developed in this. They pretty much in this story are pretty much backtracking. She is framed for murder, and then she is basically telling the lawyer that is representing her story. They go back in time, and the film takes place in the 50s through the 70s. So you get a lot of time with her character and development. And then I also liked her outfits in this. She had some really nice dresses. I have to say, I really like a girl in a nice dress, and she had some really nice dresses in this. And then the scenery in this, I did like how we got to film of the marshes and also like the beachy areas that they have in this. I believe this was filmed in Louisiana, so it looks really nice. Although this takes place technically in North Carolina, so just know that it's not filmed in North Carolina, it was filmed in Louisiana, but it still looks pretty good for what it is. Although I will say a little nitpick, there were a few times in this movie that I could definitely tell it was on green screen, and that did not look very good. But other than those few kind of scenes, the whole cinematography is done pretty well. The actual cinematography that worked on this film, she also worked on A Quiet Place. So yeah, props to her for doing the cinematography. It looks really good. There was also this married black couple that helped Daisy Edgar Jones' character throughout this journey. When she's a little kid like she is, she really doesn't have a good support system. Her father is beating all the children, and the children leave, and the mother leaves. So she is basically an orphan. So throughout this film, she really is trying to take care of herself. So this married black couple that owns this store, I thought they did a pretty good job for their screen presence in this. So I really did like their characters as well, as you can't help but smile of having them help this little girl out, as she's pretty helpless living in a marsh by herself. But I will say that something that was really interesting to me is the fact that they do own this store, and this is during segregation time, so I'm surprised that we didn't get really any mention of the hard times back then. I know that the story isn't a major focus of that, but it would have been very interesting to see if they would really even mention that, and they don't at all, so that was a little surprising. And then we get into the cons, and this movie has a lot of cons for me. First of all, the soundtrack in this, it's pretty much non-existent. There really isn't much of really any score in this film. I didn't like that we didn't really have that at all. The film is also very dry. It's very slow pace. It's very much repetitive scenes from scene to scene. And this whole love romantic connection that she has throughout the film, because she falls in love with two different guys in this. The first guy she falls in love with, something happens, and then she has another guy that she falls in love with as well. And I have to tell you, just take a shot every time she's kissing one of these boys, because we have to have some PG-13 sex scene. And I just was like, why do we need such corny little scenes here? The film is like begging for us to really get behind these different boys that fall in love with her. And I was just really cringing at this whole fact of this forcing of the love connection between both guys during these different periods of time. I also felt that it wasn't very realistic. This girl is living in a marsh, and she should be a really filthy girl. She is little and really doesn't know a lot of ways of, probably trying to bathe herself or really just trying to even live. And they don't really do the best of explaining of how she's really living. There's, I think, one scene in the movie where she's like cooking grits. She knows how to do that. So I guess she was really surviving off grits in this movie. But yeah, I mean, a little kid like this in the marsh, I mean, she should be really filthy and shouldn't have really nice teeth. And they don't really do a good job of really painting that picture here. And then the whole portion of when she is framed for the murder, and this is right off the bat in the movie, the evidence in this is so lackluster. It's not even interesting. The trial is so dull. It's completely dull. We don't get a lot of scenes about the trial. Most of the time, this story is just going into the past and showing this little girl's life up until adulthood. And we don't really get really a lot of evidence into if she killed this man or not. So it feels a lot like a Lifetime movie in that aspect. I also feel because how this movie is made, it really surprises me that this is a summer blockbuster kind of film. Usually in summer, you release the bigger kind of movies that are going to make money, and those are your points of trying to get people's butts in the seats. And this film just doesn't feel like a summer movie. It feels like something that should be on Lifetime for sure. And if not on Lifetime, maybe like a series, like a short kind of series of like 5 or 6 episodes. But the way that they tell this story and the way that it's just slowly paced throughout this film, it's a chore to get through. It is just boring, guys. I was just wanting this movie to end because for the most part, this movie is just not that interesting. It presents itself in the trailer as this murder mystery, and it could be less of that in this film. It just doesn't have a lot of really twists or turns, really none at all. And really the whole murder mystery, it just seems like it's kind of not the main focus point in this movie. And then my last few negatives about this film, if I haven't given you guys enough negatives about this film already, is the whole fact that she doesn't go to school and she is trying to learn how to read, and the boyfriend tries to teach her how to read, and he just never really finishes trying to teach her how to read. But she all of a sudden just knows how to read with no education whatsoever. And then when she speaks, she's very intelligent. So I find it really hard to believe in this story that she could be this intelligent and not go to school and know how to read and write, because her main job in this movie is she is writing to make some money as well. And I just found that really hard to believe. And a minor spoiler that really bugged me about this movie is in the beginning of the movie, it shows her father. He pretty much is beating everybody, beating the wife, beating the other children, and one by one, they leave. And they don't really do a good job of really saying what happened to those characters. There's one scene in this that really bugged me, and that is when there is a letter that comes in the mail. And the little girl wants to read it and find out about, where her mom is at. So the father reads it and he gets really ticked, and then he burns it. And we never know what was said in that letter. That bugged me throughout the entire movie. I never understood why we never got an explanation what was in that letter. Wrapping up my final thoughts on this film, I hated this film, as you can tell, and I could definitely say that this is definitely going to be on my worst movies on my worst list of the year. I'm gonna give a score of this film a 1.5 out of 5, just because I think that the acting from Daisy Edgar Jones is pretty good, and she has some really nice dresses, and that's really about it. The movie bored me to death. I did not have a good time with this movie. I would never revisit this again. And I have to say that I would think that the book is probably a lot better and probably elaborates more than this movie does. But I would like to know, if you've read this book, how is the book compared to this movie if you've watched it? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching this review, and I'll see you guys on my next one.